You are probably thinking, oh my goodness, who is that super sexy, silly little girl sitting on her silly little bed filming on her shitty little MacBook? Hi, I'm Gwen, for those of you that don't know, and this is my blog. This is our first video together, guys. So fun. We have a live studio audience over here, as you can see. Starting a blog is something that I can't say I thought I'd ever do. I love writing and I love talking, clearly. Yet, for someone with such strong opinions, I worry about what people think about me a lot. As a comm major, I also recognize the weight of my words and my diction, and I fear offending people, even if at times that's the point. Gender studies is something I've grown really passionate about over the past few years. Many people, men, see feminism as a way for women to use men as a scapegoat for all their problems, as if feminism is just a classy term for angry femcells or female incels. Well, it's entirely different. I love men. Personally, I would never be able to change a flat tire or snake my shower drain or have future kids of my own if it weren't for the existence of men in my life, admittedly so. What I don't love is the divide created by the patriarchy, aka our male-led and male-benefiting system. Women are, and always have been, held to a higher standard than men, but only in the ways that matter the least. Our bodies, our appearances, attitudes, our choices, they're constantly being held under a microscope. If we're not trying to impress others, we're envying other women to be able to do what we couldn't. We're trained to compare and compete. Is it such a shock that we can be so insecure? The concept of the male gaze in feminist media theory refers to the way in which the visual arts and literature depict the world and women from a masculine point of view that objectifies and fetishizes women. For those of you that don't know, the term was first coined by film theorist Laura Mulvey in her 1975 essay Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, in which Mulvey argues that mainstream Hollywood films are shot and edited primarily to cater to the gaze of the heterosexual male viewer. The term refers to the way in which the camera often objectifies female characters, depicting them in ways that are meant to be visually pleasurable for the male viewer rather than in ways that are true to the character's own perspective or agency. Additionally, Mulvey notes that this objectification is further reinforced by the way in which women are often depicted as passive and submissive, while men are depicted as active and dominant members of society. Some examples of the male gaze in modern media include sexualized music videos and advertisements in which the camera lingers on the bodies of performers or models just a little too long, action movies and video games in which the camera follows the movements of female characters' bodies, or in which their bodies are sexualized in costume or in the way that they're animated, TV shows and movies in which the camera frequently focuses on the physical appearance of female characters or physical attributes of female characters rather than their personalities. Even fashion photography and magazines which use women's bodies as props to sell clothing to other women using tactics of the male gaze. It's important to note that this concept is a theory, and one could argue that any depiction of women could be seen as part of the male gaze, as it is a cultural construct. More than it being an objective fact, it's a way of interpreting the visual representation of women in current day media and how they've been perceived in the media for quite a while now. It's important to note that the concept of the male gaze is not to say that all men look at the world in the same exact way, but to criticize how media is constructed to create and reinforce these certain stereotypes, these certain power relations and ways of looking, which are then internalized by the audience. It's not until recently that we've begun looking at this issue in the media we digest with observational features and modes of prevention such as the Bechdel test. For those of you that don't know what the Bechdel test is, a work of fiction such as a movie or a TV show passes the Bechdel test if it contains at least two named female characters who talk about something other than a man or men. The test is often used as a quick way to gauge the representation of women in movies and other forms of media, but it's not a definitive measure of the quality or feminist credentials of a work. There are a variety of examples of negative effects of a patriarchal society that can be found in mainstream American media today, like the portrayals of women as passive and submissive in film and television, often being reduced to romantic interests or objects of male desire, the underrepresentation and the lack of representation of women and people of color in positions of power and influence in media, such as the leadership roles behind the camera or in writing or directing, the way that women's bodies are often objectified and sexualized in the media, particularly particularly in advertising, media that promotes traditional gender roles and reinforces stereotypes about masculinity and femininity, the lack of representation of minority groups such as people of color, the disabled, and the LGBTQ plus community, and the way these groups are depicted in the media, the way that women's achievements and contributions are often dismissed or downplayed, maybe not even mentioned in news and media coverage, the way that the media often portrays violence against women as normal or even titillating and tends to blame the victim instead of holding the perpetrator accountable. These are just a few examples, but there are many more ways in which mainstream American media can perpetuate these patriarchal norms and values, which can ultimately be very harmful for all of us. The cool girl is a trope or a stereotype in literature and popular culture that describes a certain type of female character who is seen as attractive and desirable to men because she is perceived as being emotionally and sexually available, yet also low maintenance and easygoing. Conversations of the cool girl stereotype were initiated after Gillian Flynn wrote the psychological thriller novel Gone Girl in 2012. It was later adapted into a film directed by David Fincher, which centers around a woman named Amy Dunn, played by Rosamund Pike, who goes missing, and the subsequent investigation and media frenzy that ensue.
Cool girl never gets angry at her man. She only smiles in a chagrin-loving manner and then presents her mouth for fucking.
The infamous cool girl monologue performed by Amy Dunn serves as a commentary on how women are expected to perform a certain type of femininity, and in doing so, they must suppress their own wants and needs in order to be appealing to men. The cool girl monologue is a powerful representation of how women are often reduced to a stereotype, and in turn, it has been associated with feminist critique of societal expectations of femininity and what it means to be a woman and the expectations of that and the pressure women face to conform to these expectations. Not only is the cool girl monologue a depiction of the implications of the male gaze, but an expression of feminine rage. Common examples of the cool girl can be seen often in today's film and media, such as Megan Fox in the Transformers series, Donna from That 70s Show, Jennifer Lawrence as Jennifer Lawrence.
I feel like Jennifer Lawrence is that one best friend who just walks into your house, eats your food right out of your fridge, tries on your clothes, and drinks all your wine.
As you can see, the essence of being the cool girl is the ease, the effortlessness. She's so cool without even trying. But the irony of it all is that being an accepted woman in today's society is anything but effortless. Not to say that women can't be super hot and like sports at the same time naturally, but for men to uphold this expectation for a lot of their partners is unrealistic and rejects the true femininity and the inner workings of a woman. In a more recently created rendition of the cool girl trope, I've come across the popularization of the female manipulator. 22-year-old TikTok content creator Alexandra Carmona from California told Insider that her content defines the female manipulator as the kind of girl who is just mysterious and too cool. Think of a manic pixie dream girl, only she's not there to save the male protagonist. She's there to make his life hell. Amy Dunn from Gone Girl is a prime example of the female manipulator who is admittingly flawed, uses deceitful tactics to inflict pain on those around them, usually significant other. Many argue that this kind of content could glamorize unhealthy relationships and make light of emotional manipulation within relationships. But hey, if I want a boyfriend anytime soon, I can't be worrying about stuff like this. I mean, cool girl, she's unbothered. Because, God forbid, we share a single thought, we might end up like... The psycho girlfriend trope is a stereotype that's often used to describe a woman in a romantic relationship who is perceived as being emotionally unstable, possessive, or even dangerous. The psycho girlfriend trope is usually depicted as a woman who's overly jealous, clingy, controlling, who becomes obsessed with her partner and will stop at nothing to keep him. Oof, I lost my lighting. Fuck me. Does that help? A little bit. This trope is also portrayed in horror movies and thrillers where the women are depicted as vengeful and dangerous and often villains. This stereotype can also be used to justify or excuse abusive behavior from the male partner, as it implies that the woman's behavior is almost always the cause of the relationship problems after being hurt or dumped by the male protagonist. It should be noted that the portrayal of a woman as psycho is not only harmful and offensive as fuck, but it reinforces stereotypes and also trivializes the issues of mental health and abuse. This stereotype is also just another form of evidence that women are constantly held to a higher standard in our appearances, our attitudes, our actions. Here's my question. When will we ever stop being so concerned about the reputation of women? Our patriarchal society continues to villainize mentally ill women and are quick to put a label on a psycho girlfriend. But do we ever stop to think about where she derives her insecurities from? Do we ever question men for losing attraction the second a woman stops being undemanding? When we're taught from a young age that being a loving wife and mother should be our desired end goal, can you really blame us for our desperation to be loved? Why can't we be ourselves and not be worried about being loved for who we are? With all that's been said today, this issue is bigger than how we're portrayed in the media and a lack of accurate representation for women. In our male-preferred society, women face discrimination and inequality in various forms, including the areas of employment, education, and political representation. We're also at an increased risk of gender-based violence and have fewer legal rights and less rights in decisions related to our own bodies. It's important to note that the consequences of a patriarchal society go beyond just affecting women. They also affect men and also non-binary and gender non-conformative individuals. It's a complex and multifaceted problem that requires systematic change and people working together to challenge the status quo and build a more equal and just society. One way for individuals to refrain from letting our inevitably patriarchal lens affect their view on feminism is to actively seek out and consume media that is created by and for women. By this, I don't encourage the boycotting of male-made media, but I always enjoy the support of women and their efforts in equalizing Hollywood's biased playing field. It's also important to challenge and resist societal norms and expectations around femininity that are influenced by the male gaze, and to critically engage with the representation of women in media more broadly. Another way we can actively dismantle this patriarchal system is to shift the way feminism is represented in the media along with gender identity. For instance, representation of diverse body types, skin tones, cultural backgrounds, showing a wider range of female identities and experiences, also having more women and non-binary people in power and in media and advertising. This could help with just shaping better representation and more accurate depictions of our world to challenge this perspective. Coming to a close here, it's important to acknowledge that the stereotypes we previously discussed, the cool girl and the psycho girlfriend, are social constructs, can't be fully fixed by individuals alone. They're ingrained in the media we ingest, and ultimately I recognize that feminism should be defined on one's own terms and not based on societal expectations along with how you identify. But if you feel like that one scene in the movie you just watched was focusing a little too long on that girl's boobs and has you questioning your comfortability scale, or the way that a culture is being represented in the new show that you're watching kind of feels offensive and heinous, speak your truth. In a world where we're fed biased information and standards of what our moralistic values should be, our raw opinions are our strongest weapons. Do with that what you will. Thank you guys so much for tuning in on my brand new video, on my brand new vlog. I'm gonna shut up and stop saying that every video now, so you're welcome. You only have to hear this video. If you guys are feeling generous this beautiful night, go ahead and check out my blog actually while you're at it. It's pretty cool. I have some pretty cool art that I've worked on there, and I'm going to be adding a lot more stuff to it along with a lot more videos. I would love to get your guys' opinions on what I should talk about next. Thank you guys again for joining me. Stay cool, and I'll see you next video. Bye.